This is It's an Inside Job, and I'm your host, Jason Lim. This is the show where we explore the stories, strategies, and science behind growing resilience, nurturing well-being, and leading with intent. Because when it comes down to it, it's all an inside job. Well, welcome back to the top of a fresh new week. This week, I'm going to be talking about the poet and the plumber. Yes, I will answer that question throughout this episode, and it has super relevance to who you are and what you do. So let me kick off by priming you with a couple of questions. Have you ever worked with someone who had clear ideas but no structure to support them? Or maybe someone who kept everything organized but struggled to explain why the work mattered? Now, many people recognize these patterns in leaders, colleagues, and in their own habits. A useful way to understand this tension comes from James G. March, who described leadership as a balance between the poet and the plumber, meaning and mechanism, purpose and process. Now, Robert Sutton and Huggy Rao later explained on this idea in their brilliant book, The Friction Project, showing how the absence of either side disrupts progress. Whether you lead a team or manage your own projects, these two roles shape how work moves forward, and how decisions are made, and how people stay committed. So in this episode, we take a closer look at how this balance functions in practice. You'll hear how clarity supports action, how structure sustains motivation, and how tools like the pre-mortem, how it helps align the two. So by the end, you'll have a clear understanding of which role comes naturally to you, and where small adjustments, tweaks, how it can strengthen the way you lead and how you work. So let's slip into the stream into this week's episode. The concept of the poet and the plumber was first introduced by James G. March, the renowned scholar of decision-making and organizational behavior. Now, March used the phrase to describe the dual responsibilities leaders carry, shaping meaning and building mechanisms that make the meaning operational. His book, On Leadership, explores this duality in depth. Now, Robert Sutton and Huggy Rao later expanded on March's idea in The Friction Project, how smart leaders make the right things easier and the wrong things harder, which is where many contemporary discussions about this balance draw their inspiration. I first encountered the phrase through Sutton and Rao, who emphasize how leadership requires attention to both aspiration and structure. The more I worked with the idea, the more relevant it became. Not only in organizational settings, but also in the routines and decisions that shape personal work. Whether someone leads a team, manages a project, or directs their goals, the work involves two distinct modes of thinking. The poet, who establishes meaning, and the plumber, who ensures the practical conditions align with that meaning. Now, the poet, it's the architect of belief. The poetic side of leadership deals with purpose, clarity, and direction. This is not about dramatic speeches or grand statements. It's about crafting explanations that help people understand why their work matters and what the effort contributes to. The poet's role is to bring coherence. Now, a leader who expresses a clear intention gives others a reference point for decisions. For example, imagine a design director beginning a new product cycle. Instead of listing technical goals, instead she articulates a guiding principle. This product should reduce unnecessary steps in a user's day. Now, that single line helps colleagues understand the rationale behind choices, trade-offs, and priorities. It becomes a practical orientation rather than a slogan. In this way, the poet creates a shared basis for judgment. The clarity does not guarantee results, but ensures that people work with an aligned understanding of what the task is trying to achieve. Meaning, however, loses strength if it stands alone. Who's the plumber? Well, the plumber is the architect of flow. The plumbing side of leadership concerns the systems, the routines, the expectations that allow work to move steadily, to flow. These elements are often less visible, yet they have a significant influence on accountability, the coordination, and the pace. Now, poor plumbing shows up when intentions and processes contradict each other. For instance, an organization may emphasize collaboration but maintain a reward structure that recognizes only individual output. Now, in such cases, the system produces behavior that undermines the stated intention. So imagine a mid-sized healthcare organization that wants to improve continuity of care. They articulate it clearly, but the scheduling, software, reporting routines, and staff allocation do not support longer patient interactions. The intention is there, but nothing is in the operational flow that enables it. Staff eventually disengage because the daily structures, they do not match the stated priority. Good plumbing, by contrast, it creates consistency. It reinforces the message through the experience of the work itself. When responsibilities are clear, when communication paths are straightforward, and when effort leads to visible outcomes, belief becomes easier to maintain.
So what happens when one role dominates?
Leadership in any form becomes strained when either the poetic or the practical dominates. When poetry takes precedence without corresponding mechanisms, organizations end up with directions that cannot be executed. Plans remain theoretical because no structure supports them. Staff appreciate the intention but feel uncertain about how to act on it. Now, imagine a CEO who announces an initiative aimed at strengthening client relationships. She communicates the purpose clearly and speaks convincingly about the long-term benefits, but teams continue to work under tight schedules. Metrics still emphasize quantity over depth, and no process is adjusted to accommodate the changes. As you can imagine, the results are quite predictable. People feel pressure to meet existing demands rather than adopt a new focus. The initiative loses momentum, not because the ideas lack merit, but because the system was untouched. The reverse imbalance also causes problems. When plumbing dominates without a foundation of meaning, the environment becomes procedural. Imagine a fast-growing tech company that standardizes every meeting, review, and approval step in an effort to maintain order. The processes work, but employees struggle to understand the broader purpose of their work. And as a result, as is natural to think about, the engagement drops because the structure does not connect to a shared intention. Individual work follows similar patterns. A person might construct a detailed productivity system, time blocks, templates, checklists, so on, but neglect to define the underlying aim. Without the aim, routines become hollow and motivation declines. I personally think the lesson is quite straightforward. Meaning without mechanism does not move forward. And mechanism without meaning, it does not hold people's commitment, whether it's you as an individual, your team, or the organization.
Brings up a second question. How do we bridge meaning and mechanism, purpose in the process? It's a very simple and brilliant tool. It's called the pre-mortem.
Sutton and Rao described the pre-mortem as a tool that integrates both perspectives. It allows leaders to consider a project's potential success or failure before it happens, opening space for both aspiration and realism. Now, the classic post-mortem analysis, it researches and looks into what's already occurred. A pre-mortem, on the other hand, it imagines what could occur and invites participants to state the reasons clearly and openly. So to illustrate the method, imagine a team preparing to release a new internal tool. Instead of proceeding directly to execution, the facilitator divides the group into two parts. Now, the first group is asked to imagine the project 1 year in the future, fully successful. It's met all the deadlines, it's met all the key points. They articulate why it succeeded. For example, consistent ownership, structured feedback, defined milestones, early testing, clear and open communication. Now, the second group, it's asked to imagine the opposite outcome. They identify what led to failure, perhaps unclear division of responsibility, lack of early communication, inadequate resources, or misalignment between teams. Now, when both groups present their conclusions, the similarities become evident. The same factors appear in different forms: communication, clarity, responsibility, accountability, alignment. The exercise reveals the success and failure often hinge on the same elements, but approached differently. The pre-mortem strengthens both the poetry and the plumbing. It allows the poet to refine the purpose and the plumber to anticipate operational issues. The process leads to adjustments before problems appear, clear accountability, early stakeholder checks, or better sequencing of tasks.
So how can we find this rhyme and this rhythm in leadership?
Leadership requires shifting between meaning and mechanism, depending on the phase of the work. Now, early stages benefit from establishing purposes. Mid stages require structure, monitoring, and adjustment. And later stages, well, they often need a return to intention so that people see the value of what has been accomplished. Now, consider an imagined example: a COO and the head of strategy working together after a period of stalled progress in a large organization. Now, the strategist clarifies the direction, the COO aligns processes to support it. They develop a weekly rhythm that includes goal setting, system review, and follow-up. And this integrated approach, well, it prevents drift and maintains consistency. Now, startups, well, they often begin with strong poetry. There's a clear idea, a shared ambition, and a sense of momentum. But without structure, enthusiasm declines as complexity increases. Established companies frequently contain well-developed systems, but need renewed clarity to maintain that engagement. From my experience working as a coach for so many years and with leaders, the ability to alternate between both modes becomes a central leadership skill.
So what begs the question is, well, how can we use this balance to lead ourselves? What is this inner infrastructure?
The poet-plumber balance also applies to personal work. When beginning a project, it helps to define the underlying intent before planning the steps. Once the meaning is clear, building structure becomes easier and more sustainable. A personal version of the pre-mortem can also be useful. Before starting a long-term task, asking, if this does not work in 6 months, what will have caused the setback? This often exposes simple but important risks. Perhaps unclear priorities, maybe insufficient time, distractions, or a lack of review routines. Naming these risks allow for practical adjustments, such as scheduling protected time, reducing competing commitments, saying no to people, or just simply requesting support. Noticing personal tendencies is equally important. Some people gravitate towards systems and routines, but risk losing sight of the purpose. Others, well, they're strong at generating ideas, but struggle to maintain steady execution. Recognizing this helps create habits that support whichever side is underdeveloped.
There's always the friction, there's always the flow, and there's always the real work of leadership.
In the Friction Project, Sutton and Rao argue that many organizational frustrations result not from intent, but poorly designed structures. These can include unclear decision paths, unnecessary approvals, or ambiguous priorities. Removing friction indiscriminately is not the goal. Some constraints maintain quality, compliance, or safety. The true work of leadership is to determine where friction protects important values and where it obstructs progress. Now, the poet helps to clarify why certain constraints exist. The plumber, well, that ensures the processes remain proportionate and functional. So here's a simple tool for balancing the two. Before beginning any initiative, a simple diagnostic can provide direction. So, for example, if people ask, why are we doing this? well, that's a sign to strengthen the poetry. On the other hand, if people ask, how do we do this? Well, that's a sign that you need to strengthen the plumbing. Another idea is a pre-launch checklist. For example, poetry. Is the purpose clear, concise, and understandable? The plumbing. Are responsibilities, processes, and feedback mechanisms defined? The pre-mortem. Have both future success or failure being considered? And have adjustments and tweaks being made? The Poet and Plumber framework offers a grounded way to think about leadership. It shows that neither inspiration nor structure is sufficient on its own. Effective leadership depends on the interaction between the two. One establishes direction, and the other, well, it sustains it. So, before beginning your next project, consider what is the purpose that will hold people's attention? What structures will support that purpose when initial motivation decreases? And have you taken time to examine both the potential for success and the potential for failure before moving forward? Leadership, in organizations or in personal work, benefits from maintaining both roles. The balance allows meaning to be expressed through consistent action, an action to be guided by a clear sense of purpose. As we round off this episode, the main idea to carry with you is quite straightforward. Leadership depends on balancing meaning with mechanism, purpose, and process. The poet gives shape to the work by clarifying purpose. The plumber ensures that daily routines, responsibilities, and systems support that purpose in practice. When both roles receive attention, progress becomes steadier and people experience fewer contradictions between what is said and what is done. The pre-mortem is a practical way to bring the two sides together. It helps uncover assumptions, highlight risks, and clarify responsibilities while there is still time to adjust course. The same method applies to your personal projects. When you define why something matters and then build a structure that supports it, well, the work becomes easier to sustain. And as you move back into your week, reflect on which role comes naturally to you and where strengthening the other might help. Because leadership is rarely about grand gestures. More often, it's about the steady interplay between intention and implementation. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed the episode and found it quite practical and useful. I would highly recommend picking up the book, The Friction Project. I will leave the links in the show notes. But I'd love to hear your feedback and some of your comments. And if you think some leader out there or someone you know could benefit from this episode, please share it with them. It helps me spread the word. And thank you for showing up for another week and allowing me to be part of your week. And this is your host, Jason Lim, signing off for another episode. Until next time, keep well, keep strong, and we'll speak soon.